What is the secret of experiencing the deepest form of kindness, and why is it related to fish? This is the Gemara B'Sechta Shabbos. The Gemara Shabbos tells us, "Hi man, the noda b'chamish b'Shabbat, person who is born on a Thursday, yeheh gvar gomel chasadim, will be a person who shares kindness." My timer. Why? What's the connection between a Thursday? Mishum divra bei dogim v'oifes, because that's when the birds and the fish were created. So the Gemara identifies that various days make a person predisposed, depending on what day of the week you were born, predisposed to certain qualities. So what's bird and fish got to do with Gemilas Chesed? Rashi points out, because they don't have to put in any real effort in order to be able to survive, the Eibishter provides readily available food for them, which is obviously kindness. So we have to understand, what do you mean if you're born on that particular day? Gemara B'Yavamis, Isa, there's a famous Gemara Yavamis that tells us, there are 3 symptoms or signs of the Jewish people. And what is it? We are compassionate, and we're people who do chesed. In other words, that means that the attribute of kindness is natural to every single Jewish person. If that's true, what's so special about the person who is born on a Thursday that is going to be this incredibly kind individual, over and above, greater than the kindness that is embedded and built into every single Jewish person? Shloimar. So the answer lies in what Rashi says over there on that Gemara. Rashi alludes to the explanation when he tells us that the fish and the birds, that they are fed by the Eibishter's kindness, not just kindness from the Eibishter, but the Eibishter's kindness. What does that mean? The advantage of the 5th day of creation is that's when the Eibishter's kindness radiated. The Eibishter's kindness is not regular kindness, it's infinite kindness. Just like the Eibishter is infinite, so the Eibishter's attributes are each infinite. So if the 5th day of creation is the day of the Eibishter's kindness, you're going to see that the beings that are created at that time are there are the masses of them, multiples of them. As we know, fish are seen as a symbol of plenty. That the bracha that you're given is that your children should be abundant like the fish. And that's something, the bracha that's given to the fish is something that affects how we conduct ourselves as people. As the Gemara Ksuvas tells us, a Basula gets married on a Wednesday, and she consummates the marriage going into Thursday. Why do we orchestrate it that way? Because then that's the day of the bracha to the fish, which is the bracha of multiples of abundance. It's fascinating. Friday is the day that the bracha was given to humans, that we should proliferate. And here we're talking about human marriage. And yet we orchestrate weddings to go into Thursday, the day of the bracha to fish, rather than into Friday, the day of the brachas to humans. Why? Because fish have this proliferation, this incredible quantity. They spawn throughout the land. Which speaks exactly to what the purpose of marriage is, to be able to propagate. So that's the distinction between the fact that we are all, as Jewish people, wired to be kind, and the unique kindness which is bequeathed to the person who is born on a Thursday. Yes, of course, we all by nature have kindness, but that kindness has its limitations. Simply. A person is happy and willing to share kindness with others. But not if it's going to come at the cost of my own personal needs. Or to suffer in order to do kindness to somebody else, then I'm not willing to do it. Whereas a person who's born on a Thursday, where the whole nature of that day is that the Eibishter's infinite kindness radiates into and informs and determines that day, then the kind of chesed that person has is beyond restraint and restrictions. Which means that the kind of kindness that this person expresses is not the measure of the trait of kindness, because the word midah actually means a measurement, which implies limitation. Which means even when a person is doing what is correct, it's still within a certain framework and with certain limitations. But the person who is born on a Thursday is predisposed to give up everything, to be willing to sacrifice in order to do chesed, kindness, to somebody else. Now, how do you get that? How do you access this incredible, unlimited chesed? So, what creates the environment within which a person can experience unlimited chesed is for the person to have complete bittul, surrender to Hashem. As long as a person is aware of their own existence, then it's impossible for that same person to have unlimited kindness towards somebody else, because I'm very conscious of self. But whereas specifically when a person is willing to forgo their own identity, where the person is not so focused on I, the ego, my needs, my wishes, then that person can experience break through the limitations of their reality to do something, which in this case is kindness, without limits. And that is something which you can find, or at least see insinuated by fish. Because fish, as we've mentioned, they have bracha that seems to be completely unlimited. Why? Not just because they spawn so many fish, but as we know, fish are covered by the water. Which means that we land beings, we don't see the fish. All we see is the water that cloaks the fish. So here's the big Gemara. So the Gemara famously tells us that because the water conceals and covers the fish, therefore Ein Hara cannot affect them, because you can't see them. Which is why they have so much bracha, because there's no Ein Hara to restrict that bracha. Let's take it a step deeper. The concept that the water covers them, not only does that protect them, that they cannot be seen in a negative light and therefore have interference to their brachas, but the fact that the water covers the fish actually generates a positive outcome. That being in that environment where they are concealed by the water, that actually turns the fish into the best recipients of Hashem's brachas. Why would that be? Because water is the source of the sustainability, the vitality of the fish. To the extent that water becomes the true reality of the existence of the fish. To the extent Rabbi Shimon Gamliel tells us that if you have a creature that is a water creature, it is not considered a barrier, a chatzitza, that interferes between, let's say, a person going into a mikveh and the water of that mikveh, because the creature is considered part of the water. In other words, that tells you that fish have something very unique. They experience absolute bittul, complete surrender to the source of their life. Which is why they proliferate so greatly, because they are plugged into their source of life without any friction, without any resistance. But the same applies to human conduct. If a person wants to awaken and arouse within themselves the ultimate state of Gemilas Chasadim, sharing kindness, which is chesed bli hagbala, kindness without any restriction, which is plugged in and connected to Hashem's chesed, how do you get there? The person has to completely surrender their own interests and identity in favor of Hashem, like the fish surrenders its identity in favor of the water. Which is in fact what Rashi tells us on the pasuk, that you have to cleave to Hashem. What does it mean, says Rashi? It means that you have to cleave to the Eibishter's, so to speak, conduct. The Eibishter shares kindness, you share kindness. And he says that you should do these things as the Eibishter does them. What that means is, when a person serves the Eibishter in such a way that they feel that they are connected to, cleaving to Hashem, which means that the person has successfully reached a point of true connection to Hashem, which means that the person doesn't feel self. They only feel the Eibishter. The Eibishter to which the person is completely connected. When a person has that level of connection to Hashem, then their behavior is naturally as if it were the Eibishter doing it. If the Eibishter was showing chesed, it would be without limits. So this person who is so connected to the Eibishter, when he does chesed, it's without limits. Why? Because it's not him doing chesed. He's completely out of the picture. He's just a vehicle to express chesed. And it so happens that the Eibishter's chesed is unlimited, so is his. This has a specific lesson for us in our times. As we know, the unique quality of fish is associated with Yosef HaTzadik. Because that bracha of proliferating abundantly like the fish, that's a bracha that was given to Yosef's children. As the Gemara famously tells us, that Ein Hora does not affect the descendants of Yosef. Rabbi Yochanan even said it about himself. I'm a descendant of Yosef HaTzadik, and therefore I'm immune to Ein Hora. So what's that got to do with us? The connection to our generation is that the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, who is the Nasi Hadar of our generation, his first name is Yosef. And the way that the Friedrich Rebbe conducted himself was with that abundance, like the fish that proliferate en masse. He shared the spreading of Chassidus without any limitations. To be able to reach every single place, not only to every place geographically, but to completely get into the space, to enter the materialism of the space and affect it and illuminate it and elevate it through Chassidus. Even to the very lowest of the lowest of the low. As we say, based on what Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, that we have to take the Mayonis, the well springs of Chassidus, and spread them chutza. Chutza means to the outer reaches, where there is nothing further than that. And in addition to the fact that the Friedrich Rebbe had this abundance of outreach, he wasn't concerned about people looking at him askance. What people are going to say, as Yaakov Avinu told his children, Lamet Yisro, why are you worried about how, drawing attention to yourself? Which has a lesson for us as well. We have to invest in spreading Chassidus. In the very broadest, most, the biggest way that we possibly can. That the Baal Shem Tov's wellspring should get literally everywhere. And when we have complete surrender to the Eibishter, and we're cleaving to the Eibishter, which starts first of all by cleaving to Talmidei Chachamim, in other words, iskashus to the Rebbe, then we have nothing to worry about from people looking at us negatively or any other difficulties. By us engaging with alacrity, with enthusiasm, with energy in this avodah of spreading the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, we will see the fulfillment of the promise that Mashiach made to the Baal Shem Tov, that when you succeed in spreading the wellsprings of Chassidus, that brings Mashiach, and that should happen, be made of Yameinu Mamish, literally right now.